Alright, so here's part 2 of me reading Bambi. Then came the sound of the pounding hooves, and the big stag burst out of the woods. Very scared, Bambi drew closer to his mother. The king was strong and beautiful and looked tenderly at his son. "You must promise to be courageous, and one day when I'm old, you will, in your turn, become the king of the forest," the big stag told Bambi. Oops. Life continued happily for Bambi and his mother for quite some time. But one day it wasn't the sun that awoke Bambi. A frightening noise could be heard all over the forest. It was the sound of shooting. "Danger, man!" cried the running deer. All of the animals and birds fled into the trees. In just a moment the whole place looked deserted. Bambi's mother began to run, crying, "Bambi, hurry, hurry!" The shooting seemed to get closer every minute. Why are men so mean? Bambi thought. He ran as fast as he could, but his legs were getting tired. "Faster, Bambi, faster!" shouted his mother as they were fleeing. It seemed as if their happy life had turned into a nightmare. Every shadow, every tree looked threatening. Suddenly, just in front of Bambi and his mother, the big stag appeared. "Follow me," he said, and he took them to the thicket. They heard the shouts and loud roaring noise go by. Then everything was quiet again. "You're safe now, my son," said the king as he continued majestically on his way. Bambi and his mother waited in the clearing until they were sure the hunters had gone away. Then they returned to their home in the heart of the forest. Soon summer was over and the weather grew colder. One morning Bambi woke up shivering to find that the whole world turned white during the night. Every blade of grass was covered with a white coat, and so every tree and every bush. Sorry. His mother was watching him and said, "That's snow, Bambi." Bambi put one hoof out onto the snow to test the cold, crisp surface. Then he walked forward carefully, lifting his feet high. It was a lovely winter's day, and the sun sparkled on the snow. In the distance, Bambi was surprised to see Thumper playing on top of a pond. He hurried towards his friend and skidded on the smooth, slippery ice. Down he fell as Thumper laughed. Soon Bambi could walk on the ice without slipping, and he and Thumper had a fine time playing in the sun. When they heard a faint snore from the snowbank, they looked down at a deep burrow and saw the little skunk there fast asleep. "Let's wake him up," said Bambi. "No, skunks always sleep right through the winter," Thumper explained. "It's called hibernating." Winter was a lot of fun, but as time went on, there was less and less food, and all of the animals became hungry. The squirrel being very wise, had stored a lot of food inside a tree, and now he had nothing to worry about. Bambi had to learn to dig in the ground to look for plants and grass. Nights were long and very cold, and Bambi always hurried back to his mother to keep warm as soon as the sun set. One day Bambi got lost. Not far away he suddenly heard a big bang. He was very frightened and ran as far as he could. Then he stopped. His heart pounding. Everything was completely silent. He looked all around, then he began to call desperately for his mother. Silently, the great prince of the forest appeared at his side. "Your mother can never be with you again," he said quietly. "Now you must be brave and learn to walk alone." Then he left, and Bambi was alone for a while. Fortunately, Feline and her mother found Bambi and took him to their part of the forest. Time went by, and little by little Bambi's sorrow lessened. The snow started to melt, and one day there was no more. Everything was brown and damp, but something was already beginning to change. The forest was awakening from its long sleep. All of the animals were out smelling and sniffing for their coming spring. The long winter was finally over, and everybody was peeking out. Flowers were blooming here and there, and the trees were tipped with the leaves and buds. The spring sun shone on Bambi's coat. Sorry, my nose is itchy. As he walked along the forest path, he carried his head proudly, for now he had a fine set of antlers. Bambi wasn't a fawn anymore. He had grown tall and strong, and he won all the races. Woo, 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 flutters Mr. Owl, busily flapping his wings. What is all the hubbub? He asked with a frown. Won't you let me sleep? It's been days since I slept a wink. Has everybody gone crazy? Nobody's crazy, Mr. Owl. It's springtime, and we are all getting ready for the happy days ahead, said Thumper. One day, Bambi was walking alone in the forest, and he began daydreaming. He thought of his father and his mother, who was no longer with him. He remembered what his father had said to him, and it seemed that things had changed. He wasn't a little fawn anymore. That he knew, but what was it that had changed? He couldn't tell. Suddenly, he wasn't walking alone anymore. Standing next to him was a beautiful doe. Do you remember me, Bambi? She asked. I'm Feline, and she licked his nose with her pink tongue. Both of them went on down the path together. They were back together again, running and jumping, but it wasn't the same as it used to be. Feline seemed to play with Bambi, but when he got closer, she ran away from him, and then she waited for him a little distance away. Bambi was really entranced by Feline. He didn't pay much attention to anything else, but because all that mattered was his pretty little cousin. Suddenly, one day, as he was chasing Feline into their endless games, Bambi understood what it was that had changed. He was a tall and strong deer now. It was spring, and most of all, he was in love. Bambi ran to Feline to tell her what he had discovered, but as soon as he stood close to her, short of breath, he saw that she had known all along. Feline, he began anyway, will you marry me? I promise to love you and to protect you as long as I live. Feline didn't answer, but she held out her long and delicate paw. Not so fast, said a deep voice. Feline is going with me. It was Rano the deer, his antlers lowered, ready for battle. I don't want to fight, said Bambi, who hated fights. I love Feline and she loves me, so we will get married. That's exactly what I mean, said Rano. I want to marry Feline, so you must go away. Feline didn't choose you, Bambi pointed out. She chose me. I will fight for her if I must, but I do believe that you ought to be reasonable and understand the situation. Instead of calming Rano down, these words seemed to infuriate him even more. The truth is that you're afraid to fight and that you are a coward, he said. Then Bambi was convinced that there was no alternative but to fight. He wasted no time and charged straight at Rano. They met with a crash and fought fiercely until at last Bambi wounded Rano in the shoulder. By now, Bambi's and Rano's antlers had come entangled. Bambi heard Feline call him, and he managed to free himself and hold his head up high with pride. He knew that for Feline he could do anything. While Rano, beaten at last, was limping off into the forest, Bambi climbed up on a cliff and waited for Feline to join him. Now there was nothing to fear anymore. Feline came back to Bambi's side, and they walked away through the trees to the meadows to start their life together. Then one day the great stag came to Bambi, saying, "Man is coming. I can hear dogs barking. It is man with tents and campfires. You must take care of yourself and Feline. We will have to go to the hills." Sorry, I had a tickle in my throat. News had spread quickly through the forest. All of the animals were running back home and hiding. Thumper the rabbit gathered his large family together. The big stag was right. The sound of shooting was getting closer every minute. With hunters' shouts and dogs' barks, the whole forest was in turmoil. The dogs seemed to be everywhere. When Bambi left that morning to fetch some food, he showed Feline a steep cliff where she would hide in case of danger. "If I can't get back home, I'll be waiting for you there," Bambi explained reassuringly. Later in the day, the shooting got even closer. When Feline saw the dogs in the distance, she immediately started running and didn't stop until she had reached the cliff. Bambi was already there waiting for her. "Hurry, Feline," he shouted as he saw a dog very close behind her. Okay, so the video is getting long, and this is going to be put into 3 parts. I'm really sorry. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you in part 3.